I used to think that silence had a shape like a room I could walk out of. But it doesn't. It waits unnoticed until it's the only thing left in the room with me. The photo was posted at 6:17 a.m. A fall gathering in front of my grandfather's house, everyone lined up on the stone steps, smiling into October light. My father stood to the left, one hand in his coat pocket. My mother held a glass of cider. Paula wore the red scarf, the one I made for Grandma the winter after her stroke. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Adam had tagged 12 people. Not me. Not even once. There used to be a group chat called Rhodes & Co. Fall plans. I scrolled to find it. The icon was still there, but the message, "You are no longer a participant in this conversation." It wasn't a mistake. It was already clean. 3 swipes later, I found a closer shot in Elaine's feed. The caption, "Grateful for family," that shows up always. My mother doesn't post often. When she does, it's deliberate. I tapped through each smiling face. Uncle Dale, who once fell asleep during my graduation dinner. Cousin Sarah, who borrowed my interview blazer and never gave it back. Paula, tilting her chin like she always did when the camera was on her side. The scarf sat neatly over her shoulder. I remembered knitting that seam 3 times. Grandma's neck had become sensitive to wool after the hospital. She asked me for soft yarn. I stayed up 2 nights to finish it before Christmas. Someone must have taken it from the cedar chest. No one told me they were meeting. No text. No, "Are you coming?" No excuse about a missing email. There was a time when I'd get the leftover details. Directions sent last minute. A reminder to bring napkins. Never a real invitation, just a placeholder task. Still, I showed up. Not this time. The worst part wasn't being forgotten. It was realizing I wasn't needed to be forgotten. They'd rehearsed the version of the family that worked without me. Smiled into it. Framed it. I could have called. I could have asked why, but I closed the app, turned the phone face down on the counter, and watched the light change across the kitchen tiles. The red scarf stayed with me the longest, not the cloth itself, but how easily it had found a new neck. Not everything stolen makes a sound. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet long enough, someone would ask what I thought. At the last Thanksgiving I attended, I brought the pie. Pumpkin homemade crust, folded edges brushed with egg. I placed it on the counter beside the store-bought ones. No one asked who made it. Half of it remained untouched when I left. That same evening, Paula leaned over the sink wineglass in hand and spoke just loud enough for Aunt Rachel to hear. She still lives off her parents' right. I guess some people never really launch. I rinsed my plate, took hers too. There was a pattern to it all. My father once handed me a stack of mail with a thin smile. "Don't let these bills pile up again. You're not a kid anymore." The top envelope had his handwriting on it. He'd filled out the lease renewal for me without asking. The rent was still in his name. I worked overtime for 3 months after that. Paid off what I could. Moved into a place where the toilet ran, and the light above the stove flickered every time I boiled water. But it was mine. At Christmas, I mailed handwritten cards, simple ones. Red ink, neat script. I never saw them on anyone's mantel. When I asked Mom once, she shrugged. I thought it was from one of the neighbors. I stopped buying stamps the next year. At family dinners, I offered to help clean, to set the table, to bring chairs from the basement. Just sit. Cassidy Uncle Dale would wave me off. Then when things ran short, we didn't plan for an extra hand. Maybe next time, let someone know you're coming. I never showed up uninvited. But I started calling less. Then not at all. There's a small amber candle on my bookshelf. I bought it 4 years ago, meant to bring it to the next family gathering. I imagined setting it in the middle of the table, lighting it after everyone sat down. It's never been lit. The wax is still flat and unused. Sometimes I catch the scent when I dust faint vanilla, just enough to remind me of a version of the room where someone might have noticed. I kept smiling, kept showing up, kept folding myself smaller, not because I didn't know what was happening. I just thought that if I left enough room for everyone else, someone might offer a little space back. No one did. I used to think people forgot by accident. That memory was a fragile thing, easily dropped. At my graduation, I stood just outside the exit doors with the scroll still in my hand. I had ironed my gown the night before, folded the collar straight, checked my name twice on the program list. They arrived just after the last name was called. My mother held her phone in one hand. We couldn't find parking. Anyway, your sister just got into Harvard. Imagine the timing. No one asked what I was holding. Later that week, the family group thread lit up with photos of Adam at his internship orientation. First engineer in the Rhodes family, the caption read. I had already been working for 9 months. I didn't comment. When the city approved my acceptance into the infrastructure fellowship, I printed the letter and taped it to the fridge at home above the grocery list. The next day it was gone, replaced by a coupon for paper towels. I found the letter in the trash, folded neatly, not torn. My 25th birthday came with a card postmarked from the family's return address. No handwriting, no signature. Just happy birthday in silver foil and a generic printed message about making the most of every year. It felt like something left behind on a receptionist's desk. I set it on the table and stared at it longer than I meant to. Then I slid it back into the envelope and didn't open it again. There's a photo album in my parents' living room cabinet, the kind with the thick plastic sleeves and gold-trimmed pages. Each person has their own section. Paula's ballet recitals, Adam's science fairs, family trips with date labels written in black marker. My page doesn't exist. The only photo I ever found of myself was in the back behind a sleeve meant for vacation postcards. It was one of those group shots at the lake house and I was half turned away. Someone had taped a second copy of Rachel's prom picture right over my face. The tape had yellowed when I showed it to my father once he waved his hand. These albums aren't meant to be complete. Don't be so sensitive. I placed the album back where I found it, aligned the spine with the edge of the shelf, sat for a moment beside the cabinet without touching anything else. Forgetting is only accidental the first time. After that, it's a system. I never thought my name could be so easily replaced by someone else's and still feel like mine. The envelope had no return address, just the city seal, faintly embossed in the corner. It was addressed to the house I grew up in, forwarded unintentionally to the sorting shelf at my old apartment building. I opened it without thinking the way people open things addressed to a former version of themselves. Inside was a formal letter from the Department of Civic Development confirming the official record of contributors for the community water retrofit project. I scanned the list once, then again. My name wasn't there. At the top, Adam Rhodes, lead technical advisor. Below that, a handful of others, familiar names, mine missing. I still had the original agreement. It was folded in the back of my drawer, printed on heavy stock paper, my signature in blue ink, slightly smudged from when I leaned too close trying to get it perfect. I remembered uploading the design files myself. I remembered the spreadsheet with my initials next to each cost projection. I remembered the late-night emails, the phone calls, the city deadlines. All of it still sat in my inbox. I drove to the house to ask not to argue, just to understand. My father met me at the door, arms crossed. That project got political fast. You don't want to be attached to something like that. I didn't answer. He stepped aside long enough to let me glimpse the stack of folders on the dining room table. I recognized the color-coding system. Mine. The same format I'd built from scratch 2 summers ago. "You're young," he continued, flipping through a folder. "Sometimes it's better to let things go quietly." I didn't reach for the papers. I looked at the wall behind him where a framed certificate now hung. The title line read, "Presented to Adam Rhodes for outstanding technical leadership and innovation." I could still hear the voice in my head from the meeting months earlier when I proposed the filtration overlay. "We'll run it through review," my father had said, not looking up from his notes. "The copy of the original contract is still in my drawer. The edges have curled slightly. The ink hasn't faded. I haven't shown it to anyone, not because I'm hiding, but because there's something final about being written out in silence. When someone else's name stands where mine used to, and no one flinches, there's no argument left to make. I used to think dignity came from standing your ground, but sometimes it's knowing when not to." I returned on a Sunday. No one was home. I didn't check ahead. The hallway smelled like dust and lavender floor cleaner. Everything looked just as it always had, slightly too neat, as if order could make up for the things left unsaid. I moved quietly through the house, one drawer at a time. I took only what was mine. The ceramic mug with the chipped rim, my textbooks, a pair of walking shoes I never wore because they squeaked on tile. The last thing I packed was a white button-down shirt. It had a faint stain near the hem, something beige and permanent. My mother had folded it once, but never apologized for ruining it. She placed it in my closet again without a word, like nothing had happened. When I held it, I could still feel the silence of that day. I didn't throw it out. I smoothed it, folded it tighter, and laid it on the edge of the bed. It didn't belong to me anymore. No one texted. No one asked where I'd been. I didn't send a forwarding address. I removed my name from the utility bills, cancelled the shared bank account, updated my emergency contact at work. I crossed out Rhodes on my HR paperwork and initialed the change. There was a hook near the front door. My father used it every evening when he came in keys lanyard receipts folded twice. I placed mine there gently, not because I wanted them to find it, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of pretending I still had a place to unlock. 2 nights before I'd received a message from my mother. "We didn't mean to hurt you, but you've always been the difficult one." I didn't respond. Later, Adam sent a short reply to a message I hadn't sent. "Just let it go. Nobody meant anything by it." They always knew how to choose words that meant nothing while still cutting straight through. I didn't take the photo albums, didn't touch the framed certificates on the wall. I didn't need reminders of where I'd stood. There was no final conversation, no confrontation to bookmark the moment. Just the weight of one last folded shirt and a key left exactly where it belonged, visible, silent, and no longer mine. I never realized how much air there was in a room until no one expected me to speak. The attic unit had low ceilings and uneven floorboards. The window cracked slightly at the edges, but the lock worked. I paid the deposit in cash and didn't leave a forwarding address. The landlord didn't ask about family. He handed me the keys and pointed to the laundry hours taped crooked on the fridge. Nothing more. The desk came with the place-scratched pine drawer stuck halfway. I wiped it down with a rag that smelled like lemon and old soap. I set my black fountain pen in the center parallel to the edge. At the station where I started part-time, no one asked about my last name. Not once. Not when I signed the shift schedule. Not when I handed in forms. No one blinked when I wrote Cassidy Lane. My supervisor looked over the paperwork and nodded. Looks clean. We'll see how you do on Monday. That was it. Each morning I boiled water in the dented kettle I found at the second-hand store. The handle stayed warm, just long enough for one pour. I drank, slowly, facing the window, watching the traffic hum below rooftops. There was a small piece of tape on the wall above the desk, left by a previous tenant maybe, but I didn't remove it. I wrote one line on a torn scrap of engineering paper and pressed it there. This time, I billed it for myself. I kept the light low in the evenings. The heater made a dull knocking sound when it kicked on. I started revisiting old schematics, not to impress anyone, just to see if I still knew how to look closely. The ink from my pen bled slightly on the cheap paper. I didn't mind. I adjusted a pressure diagram from the stormwater blueprint I once presented to the city. No one had commented on the margin notes. I rewrote them anyway. When I called the utilities office to set up my name on the account, the woman on the phone paused. No second occupant listed. I held the phone tighter. No, just me. You sure you don't want to add an emergency contact? No one local, I said. There was a pause, but she moved on. All right. Welcome to Ridge Street. That night, I folded the confirmation letter and slid it into a drawer without labeling it. If no one knew where I had gone, it meant I could decide what counted as arrival. I've learned that some invitations aren't meant to include you, only to prevent your absence from being noticed. The envelope was cream-colored, sealed without care. Inside a folded card with glossy lettering, "You are cordially invited." My name printed at the bottom read, Cassie Rhodes. No title, no lane. Not even the right version of myself. There was a handwritten note in a tight, slanted script. Hope you'll attend. It's easier if no one has to explain. No signature. But I recognized the ink thin and blue, the kind my mother kept in the kitchen drawer, next to expired coupons and bread ties. I called the old house out of reflex. The line clicked twice. Oh, I wasn't sure this number still worked. Her voice moved quickly. Everyone else will be there. We'd like the whole family in the photo. It looks more cohesive. Not complete. Just presentable. I didn't respond right away. I think she expected that. I'm sure you still have that red dress, she added. It photographs well. I thanked her, or maybe I didn't. The call ended before I decided which mattered more. 2 days later, Thomas messaged me. We hadn't spoken in over a year, just a former colleague who remembered details. Your name's still listed on the specs they're promoting. Same diagrams, same calculations. They're attaching them to a grant pitch. I typed one sentence and erased it, then another, then nothing. I unfolded the invitation again. The corners had curled slightly from the humidity. I flipped it over and ran my thumb along the back edge where a slight miscut revealed a white strip under the gloss. Cheap print. The name they used, Cassie, was never mine. It was a version they preferred in small talk. It fit better on social lines, sounded softer in group introductions. I once corrected my father in a meeting. Cassidy, I'd said quietly. He glanced at the client and replied, She insists on the long form. We let her, don't we? I tucked the invitation back into the envelope, then slid it behind a book on my shelf, out of sight, not quite discarded. There's a kind of silence that feels earned. And then there's the kind used to frame you in someone else's picture. I still hadn't decided if I'd attend. But if I did, it wouldn't be to fill a chair. I used to pause before signing anything, as if someone might lean over my shoulder and suggest a better version of me. Now, The signature comes without hesitation. I keep the pen in a small ceramic tray on my desk, alongside a paperclip bent out of shape and a slip of graph paper with half a formula I've memorized but never discarded. The company isn't large. No glass walls, no branded mugs, no mission statement printed in cursive. But the drawings make it to construction. My initials sit beside every measurement review. Sometimes I see my own corrections built into sidewalks. No one here shortens my name. Grace texted last week, "I'm listing you as lead engineer." No debate. You've carried it. She doesn't use flattery, just facts. I typed a simple "okay" in response and let it be. My apartment hasn't changed much. Same crooked heater, same coffee stain on the left armrest of the chair. But the lavender near the window is real now, not artificial. I water it twice a week and trim the browning edges myself. It doesn't bloom in perfect symmetry. I like it better that way. Each morning I grind just enough beans for 1 cup. No travel mugs, no second pour. The coffee isn't strong, but it tastes familiar, slightly bitter, slightly burnt. Always mine. When I filed the patent reapplication for the water distribution model, the form asked for collaborators. I left the line blank, not from spite, just clarity. The steel pen I used left a groove on the signature line. No monogram, no initials gifted by someone else, just weight and balance. When I held it, my hand didn't tremble. At lunch last Tuesday, someone in the break room mentioned the Rhodes Foundation Gala. Their voice had no weight behind it, just small talk. I think they're giving Adam another award, something about city outreach. I stirred cream into my coffee and didn't add anything. He used to laugh when I corrected his calculations. You take things too seriously. It's not like they'll double-check. They always did. But only after it failed. That night, I reviewed an old proposal with a red pen. No one had asked me to. I just wanted to see if I could spot what I missed the first time. Growth isn't loud. It doesn't post updates. Sometimes it's just knowing the paper you're signing will finally stay in your name. I used to think closure came with a stamp, that sealing something meant it stayed where you put it. I printed the letter on thick paper, the kind that doesn't fold easily. The wording was precise, withdrawal of all intellectual affiliation, revocation of rights to use my contributions in any public documentation without my consent. No flourish, no emotion, just architecture, measured lines built to hold weight. I melted the wax slowly, careful not to let it drip unevenly. Pressed the seal firm, even though I knew I wouldn't mail it. The envelope sat on the table for 2 days. I moved it only to clean beneath it. In the end, I scanned it and attached it to an email. No legal threat. Just one sentence. I do not consent to my name being used in any technical or promotional material without review and approval. Stephen Caldwell replied within an hour. Understood. Your documentation will be removed from the grant packet immediately. No apology. Just compliance. That was enough. At the courthouse, the name change form asked for a reason. I left the box blank. I slid the papers across the counter, waited for the stamp. The clerk didn't look up when he said, "Lane's a clean name. You'll keep fewer attachments that way." He wasn't wrong. I signed in ink that didn't match the form's header. It didn't matter. When I returned home, I opened the wooden box on my shelf, the one with uneven hinges and a velvet lining that had started to peel. It held birthday cards, a postcard from Oregon, the handwritten note from my engineering mentor, with a single line, "Don't apologize for being exact." I added the necklace from my grandmother, thin chain glass pendant, faded metal clasp. She once called it something quiet to carry close. I didn't lock the box, just closed it gently and set it back where it had always been. Not out of reach, just out of circulation. A week later, I received a voicemail from my father. "We're surprised you made everything so formal. You could have come to us first," as if the silence hadn't spoken louder, as if names were only real when spoken aloud in kitchens. I deleted the message without saving it. Not out of anger, just maintenance. There are things I still remember, things I still keep. But now they live in past tense, untouched, unclaimed, unneeded. I used to think arrival meant being seen. But this morning, I didn't turn on the light. I made tea. The cup has a shallow chip near the base. I keep that side turned toward me. It fits my hand without thinking. I sat by the window not for the view, just the habit. The light came in soft enough to see, not enough to demand anything. There's a note pinned above my desk. Reclaim structure, integrity from silence. Not a motto, just true. My name is printed alone on the North Ridge schematic. Cassidy Lane. No edits, no footnotes. It's already been approved. Grace messaged last night. "You don't owe them clarity. The invitation from next door brunch maybe still sits under a glass of water." I didn't reply. Someone knocked, lightly. I stayed seated. There's a Polaroid behind my bookshelf. I'm standing beneath the courthouse tree the day my name became mine. My hands are in my coat pockets, no smile, just standing. I sign my name now without pausing. The pen moves like it trusts me. The mailbox downstairs reads C Lane. The emergency contact field is empty. I watered the lavender this morning. Some stems leaned toward the sun. I let them. Not every door needs to open. Not every life needs explaining. Some peace is quiet because it finally belongs to you.